Hey folks, so today we need to talk a little bit about the bond market. Why the bond market? Well, the bond market is really important. Number one, it's much larger than the stock market. And number two, it has actually had a huge move year to date, and so there's actually an embedded trade idea here. So I'm going to show you guys a couple charts right now today, which I think are right now here today in the middle part of August 2019 are the two most important charts to look at as it relates not just to the bond market, but really as it relates to risk assets in general and what the current levels of bond yields and bond prices might actually mean. Make a long story short, bonds, whether you're looking at European bonds where bond yields are negative pretty much throughout the yield curve, or you're looking at US bonds where the 10-year was yielding as much as 3.2% 10 months ago, now it's yielding at 1.6, so half of yield, and of course price goes up. There's an inverse relationship between price and yield. So two charts we're going to look at here, and we'll start off with this one. What we're looking at here is an ETF that represents the longer end of the bond market. So here we're basically looking at something called a TLT. And two things. First of all, from a price perspective, you can see that we reach a level of very overbought ratings in terms of the price itself. Just recently, we had a very steep move to the upside. We're now back at a point where we found previous resistance. That's nice to know. Secondly, from a momentum perspective, you can see we were overbought here. This is a very simple momentum indicator called the MACD. At this point in time, we were very overbought, then bonds corrected a little bit. Same thing here, bonds corrected, and it's, in my opinion, happening once again here. We've reached extreme levels of overbought, at least according to the MACD, which again is about the same levels where it was in the past. The other chart that I want to show you has to do more with implied volatility, or basically risk that's being assigned to the bond market by, or at least to this ETF that represents bonds by traders. And so what you can see here is the same exact chart, actually, a little bit of a more short-term time frame. But at the bottom of the chart, instead of momentum, I have something called implied volatility. Implied volatility basically is, again, the risk that traders in general embed into an asset. And you can see we had very high or higher-ish implied volatility here, here, and here. And each time in the past, we can go back further as well, when implied volatility reaches high levels like that, the bond market ultimately either fell a little bit or at least stagnated. And I think that's very likely to once again happen here with implied volatility very overbought. I do think the bond prices, at least for the short term, are going to cool off. So if we go back to this chart here, very specifically, what's my idea? I think the TLT ETF here in the very near term could see a bit of a mean reversion move lower, possibly into the area of about 137, 138 or so. I do think ultimately, the bond market will continue to the upside, and that's kind of the point here. That this is a counter trend trade, if you will, through the lens of the near term, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks. But if I look, at the bond market through the lens of the next few months, the next few quarters, I do actually think bond prices could continue to go higher, so the TLT ETF could continue higher. It's just that right now I think it's very overbought, and this will also have its reverberations throughout the equity markets. So these two charts here that I showed you, in my opinion, the two most important charts right now, whether you put a trade on it like that or not, just be aware of where the bond market is. The reason I felt compelled to share this with the broader audience as well as a trade idea that I've been showing our clients now for the past few days is because we've seen a lot of people asking us, is it time to buy bonds? And after a huge move we've just had in bonds, I don't think this is the time to chase bonds higher. If anything, at least for the near term, days, maybe a few weeks, I think they're overbought. I hope this is helpful. If you guys enjoyed this, if you have any comments, leave them down below, give us a thumbs up, and share the channel, subscribe, all the good stuff. Take care.